So we made another Power 25 update this week. Again, I don't think it was like a big, massive update. Not a lot of changes. I know still there were some teams that maybe only played one game just because of weather last week throughout the state. Other teams were on their spring break trips last week. Some other teams were out of state, so they maybe got 4 or 5 games in. So I think we just kind of made some changes, but not a ton. So I don't know if there's any teams you guys want to touch on off the bat. But I know like St. Lawrence remains at 1, Normal Community remains at 2, and then there's some shifting from there on out. But go ahead if you guys got anything.
I don't know if you want to get into teams right away, Pete. I just think like my main takeaway doing it again this week and talking through it as a staff, and Pete, you kind of going through everything and slotting teams and us, revisiting it is like it remains really, really hard. That was kind of my biggest takeaway is the differential in games, the out-of-state games, the not getting into conference yet. It's always hard too because, hey, one team may beat a Power 25 team, but who's the Power 25 team throwing and who's that one team that maybe upset them throwing? Like, is it a number 1 arm versus a number 7 arm? Is it a bullpen day for that team? So it remains extremely tough. I don't think we have a very, very clear picture yet of like who the best teams are. I think we're working our tail off right now to go by the eye test, to go by what we thought preseason, to go by who teams are playing, looking at these out-of-state teams and these Power 25 wins and, what's the matchup. Like a big one that I know came this weekend was Libertyville and Brother Rice. That was a big one that, Brother Rice came away with. But, like, also, the conditions were terrible. Like, they were playing on a turf field, and there's, like, basically puddling up on a turf field with how much rain we were getting. And there's some teams that aren't in the Power 25 that probably deserve to be in there, but I don't think there's room yet to be kicking teams off, at a high rate of the Power 25. So, Pete, that was like just some overarching things that I had on the Power 25 as we get into April here, get into some better weather, more consistent weather, conference play, things should start sorting themselves a little bit clearer for us.
Yeah, it was a tough week. It was a hard one for sure. I mean, like, yeah, it's not easy to slot teams, especially early with the records like not kind of established, truly yet with like a ton of wins. There's still some tight records with like not rough starts, but like slow starts or whatever you want to call it. And like just because someone beats someone one time doesn't mean they're better, right? Like that's a tough thing that we have to deal with is like just because someone beats someone, do they have to be ahead of them? Like no, like not necessarily. Like the Dodgers are the best team in baseball and they lose games frequently, right? Like that doesn't mean they're not the best team in baseball. And the same thing, like you said, like look who threw, right? Like did they throw their ace and then they throw like 4, bullpen guys essentially to get a bullpen day? Like that all that kind of plays into it. But yeah, I mean, Def, I see you're slotted here to talk about Lawrence, but yeah, it's not cut and dry yet. But we're doing our best for sure.
No, yeah, I think with Lawrence, like they've just kind of been steady Eddie so far. Like they're 9-1. Their only loss came to IMG. I think we talked on them last week in that regard. But even when I went and saw them, like they, to me, look like the number 1 team in the state. They got down early, but there was zero panic. It's an older team, so they're going to be a battle-tested group. They were last year. They play in the CCL Blue, and they're probably going to drop a couple games this year, especially once they get into conference play. Like, that conference is nuts. But right now, I think we all feel really comfortable with them as our number 1 squad. And just looking ahead at their schedule, like, they go down to Kentucky. And, Drew, I know you've touched on, like, this little tournament they kind of do down in Kentucky before, but they're going to be playing some of the best schools in Kentucky down in the Louisville area. So will be another good test for them.
Yeah, I think there's 3 teams going down, Pete, from the Chicagoland area. I don't want to get it wrong right now, but I want to say it's St. Lawrence, Brother Rice, and Mount Carmel. So correct me if I'm wrong. And they'll play St. X, Trinity. Oh, Pravi. Maybe it's Pravi instead of somebody else. So I could be mistaken on that.
I just know Pravi's going because I had that in the little nugget on them.
But they'll play St. X, they'll play Trinity, and those are always predominantly like two of
That's
the best
one and
teams in the
two.
Louisville, Kentucky area.
It's
Um,
1-2 right now in
so they'll be
Kentucky.
tested for when they come back to Chicago. But yeah, it's three of those four teams that we mentioned. I'll try to nail that down here before we're done. But get in there if you guys have anything else.
Well, I was just gonna say these records are from Sunday night. Also, I know some games have probably been played. Like I know Lawrence won yesterday, Lincoln Way East won, so they're 9-0. But yes, 9-0 on the year. They went 3-0 last week. They had a really good week down in Tennessee. Swept every team they played in dominant fashion. And they're another one. Like we were probably a little low on them to start the year, and they're starting to kind of work their way up to probably where they should be. And they are a team that passed the eye test. So high on them. They're rising as a result, 3 spots.
Yeah, well, Fallon made one of the bigger jumps this week in the Power 25. They were at number 18. They jumped up to number 10. They are now 10-4. They had a 6-1 week, so they were just one of those teams that were able to get in a ton of games. They were playing a lot of out-of-state schools, mostly Missouri, so pretty close there for them. But yeah, up to 10-4, 6-1 week. So Fallon is at number 10 now.
Which is just crazy to play 7 games in a week. When we look at a lot of these other schools that maybe played 1 or played 2 and they split in 2 games, and it's like, all right, how do you weigh 2 games versus 7 games to where they're having to use their entire pitching staff? So going 6-1 playing 7 games like really stands out to me, Gav. And then Tyler, I know you're going to jump on a team that I also think is really hard to get a pick because they're 5-5. So the record is like, okay, how do you view that versus a team that's outside of the Power 25 sitting at 10-1 or 9-1, but there's eye test there and there's some other stuff.
Yeah, I'll touch on Lockport first. I actually have 2 teams I want to touch on quick, but jumped them up 14 spots. Now, listen, last week we kind of talked about they didn't have the best week. The week prior, we moved them down to number 25 after being our preseason number 13, but they played like a totally different team this past week. 2 huge Power 25 wins. They beat Brother Rice 8-3. Then they beat Providence Catholic 11-3. Like, not even necessarily like really tight games or anything either. So, for that, like we rewarded them. Like, if you're gonna go out and you're gonna play like that, like it almost in a way it was like we weren't wrong. We were like early on them, like that old joke there, like. Because that is kind of what we thought we'd see at the beginning of the year when we ranked them number 13. So they had a huge week. I know we're recording on Tuesday here, but they actually beat this next team I'm going to talk about last night on Monday. And that's now number 9, Homewood Flossmoor. They're 6-1 entering last night, so they're now 6-2. But they jumped up 3 spots, and like they didn't get a ton of games in last week. But like one thing that kind of stood out to us was like, they lost 4-1 to number 1 St. Lawrence. And seeing that, seeing St. Lawrence's lineup, the fact that they were able to hold them to 4 runs to me says a lot. And I know we've touched on their pitching in prior episodes, but it just kind of backs up why we're so high on Homewood Flossmoor. But it'll be interesting, like not to spoil next week or anything, because we don't fully know yet. But like they just lost last night to number 11 Lockport, so that'll be an interesting dynamic we'll have to juggle next week when we go to update this.
Yeah, and then at number 12 now is Triad. They are 8-2. They had a 3-0 week, and then they had a big win against Wisconsin's Power 25 number 16 team, Appleton North. They won 18-7. So Triad is up to number 12 now.
They're another team too where I felt like we got a great eye test on them. Like all 3 of us saw, Tyler, myself, and Pete all saw them play at the Kickoff Classic, so we saw a ton of their arms. They have arguably one of the best left-handed hitters in the state, especially in that junior class with Keegan Sipe. And then I love the top of their order with Carter Gaskell and Braxton Yates. And they always play really good baseball down there under Coach Bugger. So I feel really good about Triad. And I mean, obviously time will tell here over the course of the season, but off to a really, really strong start.
Yeah, we got 2 new teams hopping into the Power 25, and it was like a tough dynamic. Like, I felt like there was 4 or 5 teams that could get in this week, but it's like we just can't knock enough teams out right now. So that's like part of the dynamic of doing this. But two that got in, I felt Sandberg had to get in without a doubt. They have two ranked wins on the year now. They're 7-0. They beat number 17 at the time, Maine South, 6-2, and then they had an early season win over Lamont, 7-4. So two ranked wins like that to me, they're in based off that 7-0. They're always a good program. Like they've always got talent running through those hallways at Sandberg. So not surprising there. A lot of probably like two sport football, dual sport guys over there that are just going to be good athletes. And then Lincoln Way West, kind of the same deal. Like they lost some talent last year, but they just reload and they just get more guys coming, guys that have, they've been in the program for a little bit, maybe had to sit behind some guys, but now they're getting their shot and they're 6-1 on the year. They're just coming back from Lake Point, the tournament we were hosting down there, the spring breakout, and they had a good week, 3-1 on the week, and I know they passed the eye test to Ian Smith, who one of our best scouts in the company. And he was a fan of them. So, coming in at number 19 and Sandberg's in at number 17, debuting.
Yeah, the two newcomers in this update, and I think you hit on it. Like, there's a number of other schools we'll touch on here when we get into the outside of the Power 25. But like Sandberg, they'll go ahead and win 12-2 yesterday as well. So they're up to 8-0 now, undefeated. A team that's definitely got our attention. And then Gavin, another Southern Illinois team that I think's been like one of the more impressive teams in the entire state to start the year.
Yeah, number 20 here, Mascoutah. They are 7-0 on the year. They had a 2-0 week with a 5-0 win over Edwardsville. They also beat Collinsville 9-0. And then just looking back at their season so far, I saw that they beat Teutopolis, who I saw at the Kickoff Classic, and I thought they had a really good team. A lot of pitching depth on that Teutopolis team. So being able to beat them and then just kind of like the resume they've started to build up this year, really impressive for Mascoutah, now sitting at number 20.
Yeah, one thing that I've noticed here is like they just don't seem to give up runs. Their pitching is really, really strong. Do we want to touch on Lane Tech here before we get into the outside of Power 25?
Yeah, we can touch on them quick. They're rising 2 spots this week. They went 2-0. They got a ranked win over Loyola, 17-14, that marathon of a game. But, I mean, yeah, they're just another one. Passed the eye test. They got a good mix of young talent that have already proven themselves in like a Dodger Frederick, and then Paris Head, who's had a great start to the year. And then they got seniors that have been around, and, they're talented, and they got depth on both sides of the ball. So they're a team. They're 4-4. So, someone looking outside that with a better record's like, why aren't we in? It's because, like, we think their record's going to be a lot better when it's all said and done.